We've got lots to cover, not too much time to do it in. So I want to start with the most obvious of obvious questions and share why sustainability is so important for you guys at IFS.
Yeah, of course. At IFS, put simply, we recognise our role in working towards a more sustainable world. Our strategy is designed to drive action against the topics where we can have the biggest impact, and that's framed around three pillars. First pillar, our business, of course, sustainability in our own business. Second of all, the impact we can have with our customers. And third of all, the broader impact we have on society. Of those three pillars, helping our customers transition to more responsible and sustainable methods of doing business is clearly where we have the greatest impact. Our position as a leader in industrial AI means we feel that we've got an outsized role to play in shaping our collective future.
When it comes to talent, though, as that's obviously a very large part of your role, how does that plug into the world of sustainability for you? How do the two interact with each other?
Well, I'll give you just one example and just focus on one of those pillars that I just referred to, perhaps the idea of sustainability in our own business. So one way that we're leveraging talent to promote sustainability is by building a network of sustainability business partners across IFS, people with domain expertise in various fields, things like procurement and IT and HR and finance. So we, the ESG team, equip them with a fundamental knowledge on sustainability principles, and then we challenge each of them to help us devise strategies that are relevant for their particular domain. That way, we're leveraging unique skills and talents of our people to create a strategy that is meaningful and relevant for our business and where there's clear ownership for ongoing execution.
Innovation, though, is key here because a lot of these strategies require fresh ideas, fresh thinking, new way of doing things. How do you encourage innovation at IFS when it comes to sustainability? Because it's very easy to say, it's very easy to put in a presentation saying we must all be more innovative. How do you go about actually implementing that in the real world?
Yeah, of course. Well, innovation sits at the heart. We're an enterprise software company, so of course it's a critical attribute for our business. And it really does sit at the heart of our mission to drive sustainable and transformative growth for our customers, who really represent essential industries in the global economy, helping these industries that the world depends on. We're talking utilities, we're talking manufacturing, aerospace, helping them unlock the transformative power of industrial AI. That's our core objective. We're pretty proud of that opportunity. And so, innovation's super important. We build, at the moment, we're building technology that learns from itself. That is exciting innovation, but it also means that there's a clear risk that existing biases and assumptions might creep in from the build stage and become compounded once we release products to market. So that's why it's super important that the technology we design today considers diverse voices, diverse stakeholders, and different scenarios. Not necessarily diversity in the obvious sense, although that's important, but more cross-functional. What I'm really talking about here is cognitive diversity. Different perspectives, different expertise, maybe different levels of seniority, folks who can advocate for different stakeholders. They may not all feature in the project team, but they will be interviewed for expert insights. So that way we retain agility in the core team that's driving the project while mitigating the risk of bias or any blind spots. And that's where we see value in diversity. That's where we see the value because it leads to better decision making. And we like to think that in this way we can play our part in shaping a more sustainable world that works for everyone.
And that leads me on really nicely to where I want to take things next about inclusivity, as mentioned in the title of this discussion. Again, let's get into definitions. It's another one of those things that's incredibly easy to say, as in, yes, we're an incredibly inclusive business. Our strategy is very inclusive. For you, what does that actually mean when it comes to sustainability? How does that manifest itself in the real world for you?
Okay. I would say simply that at IFS, we believe every person deserves to feel valued, respected, and empowered. And empowered specifically to thrive during their time here with IFS. And that commitment, I think you're right. The idea of fostering an inclusive, fair, and equitable workplace, it's easy to be a soundbite, but I like to think that at IFS, it's not just a statement, it's also the foundation for high-performing, cognitively diverse teams that drive innovation in the field of sustainability and general business success. I would argue, I would say, our success is built on the strength of our people. I would probably argue that the strength of any business is built on the success of its people. So by fostering an environment where every individual at IFS feels included, right, feels witnessed, feels empowered to do their work, we drive not only fairness, but we also promote the kind of innovation, collaboration, and excellence that defines who we are.
Well, let's convert some of those definitions into a bit of advice, frankly, because we've talked a bit about diversity, inclusivity, how that can help and support your sustainability efforts. What I'd be fascinated to know is, I'm sure you've reached a very good place with that now, but what challenges have there been on the way that you think other people could learn from? Because I think that's often the most valuable thing you can take from one of these journeys. You can have a great number of successes, but on that way, there will have been bumps on the road. What have those challenges been for you?
It's super interesting to frame the question in that way, because actually when I think about it, at IFS, we never really framed this whole topic of inclusivity as a challenge. We've always taken quite a constructive and forward-looking approach to those discussions. But to your point, maybe sharing some concrete examples of things that we are doing, because we find that they are generally helpful. So I'll give you 3 examples. One, we spend a lot of time building awareness and capability. That means offering regular workshops, conversations that help deepen our collective understanding of inclusion, collective understanding of how to mitigate bias. And really, that's about equipping our leaders with the skills that they need to build cognitively diverse and high-performing teams. So that's number 1. Number 2 would be about spending a lot of time and effort embedding fairness and transparency to ensure meritocracy. And we continuously review and strengthen our policies and processes, hiring, promotion, performance evaluations. And we do that to ensure fairness, to ensure accountability, and to ensure equitable access of opportunity. A simple example might be looking at who sits on hiring panels for interviews, or ensuring equity of access to management training programs for existing staff. The point is that by mitigating the risk of bias, rather than setting artificial goals, we're strengthening our commitment to meritocracy. And then the third point, another example, quite a simple one, listening, supporting, and taking action, with the emphasis on listening. We're certainly committed to open and honest dialogue. Employees are encouraged to share concerns and ideas through established feedback channels, or engagement surveys, and so on. We also ensure the availability of resources, things like employee assistance programs, to really keep that conversation going. So I would say, again, in summary, building awareness and capability, embedding fairness and transparency to ensure meritocracy, and then really listening, supporting, and taking action on the feedback we receive.
One thing you've touched on quite a few times during this conversation is the identification of bias. And again, something that's easy to talk about and say everyone's on the lookout for, but can be fiercely difficult to actually identify as well. How do you go about actually doing that in practical terms? Because that's clearly something that's very important to you.
I think it's just a muscle that you have to develop over time. So let's take a simple process, something that every organisation should be going through: regular talent reviews, right? And you may have some type of evaluation process. 9-box model is one of those examples. But you're looking to really assess the talent and the capabilities that exist. Going into that process, we would be educating and enabling our people managers on different types of bias: proximity bias, recency bias, double dip, a whole bunch of different things. We're just having a conversation that says, as you prepare for that, are you thinking about these topics? As you prepare for those talent reviews, are you focusing on facts, not feelings? And then, of course, as you're going through the actual review process itself, just checking in, right? Looking at the spread of resources across whatever talent review process you're using, and comparing that with the norms in your organization. You might have specific gender diversity splits, I don't know, maybe 60-40, and yet the split of high performers to low might be 40-60. Why is that? Is there any underlying assumptions that are taking place there? Is that something we can lean into? It's not about enforcing the outcome, very clear on that, but it's about creating the conditions to mitigate bias.
So it's in creating conditions, then you'll often get the outcomes as a result of setting the right conditions.
Yes.
Let's look at how having a diverse team has led to better results and outcomes for you. When you're looking across performance, how do you connect the two? Are there any areas that you'd like to celebrate?
Yeah, I think we're certainly very fortunate at IFS that we have quite a generally high diversity relative to industry averages in the enterprise software space. So a good example would be 33% of our people managers are female. Whilst that means there's still a lot more work to be done, and of course we strive to do better, it does compare well across the industry. We've certainly found also that over time, that point I made earlier, cognitively diverse teams bring better ideas. They challenge us to think differently. They help us ultimately deliver stronger results for our customers. We see evidence for that in our financial performance as a company, right? The terrific growth that we're seeing across our entire business. We see it in evidence in our employee engagement survey results and even our employee retention rates. But set all that aside, perhaps more importantly than all that, fostering a fair, inclusive and meritocratic workplace, I just think it's simply the right thing to do.
Very true. Questions coming in from the audience that I did want to cover off very quickly. Yeah. This links back to something you just mentioned. Can you explain more about how you define cognitive diversity?
Yeah, of course. When we talk about diversity, often we can think about it in the traditional sense, right? Demographics and so on. Actually, what I'm thinking about is different perspectives and different expertise. So let's say we're designing a product. We would want to make sure that there is adequate input from customers, from users, from designers, from developers, from people with different levels of seniority to understand the potential impact, to check the user interface for its user friendliness or its usefulness. What you want is to capture a broad set of different perspectives that advocate for different stakeholders. So it's kind of thinking a little bit more broadly beyond these traditional ideas of who are stakeholders in a project and trying to capture as many diverse experiences and expert insights as possible. And the point I was trying to make is you want to be doing that in a way where maybe you are interviewing these people, but you're not necessarily involving them in the core project team. You want the core project team to be agile as possible. But conducting interviews, getting those different perspectives and different levels of expertise is super helpful. Now, I'll digress for a moment because there's a really interesting example of that, quite an extreme one. I happen to know that in Japan, when the government sits down and explores long-term regulatory changes, they would invite people from the wider community, not to represent their interest today, but to represent the interests of 7 generations into the future, to make sure that there are no unintended consequences of policy-making decisions that happen today. Now, I think that is a very profound, quite an interesting example of really stretching the boundaries of all the different stakeholder perspectives that need to be taken into consideration when making a specific decision. Do we need to go that broad and wide within the software space? Maybe not 7 generations, but as broad a perspective as possible really helps with cognitive diversity.
Profound is definitely the word I was thinking of when you give that example. That's wonderful. A little bit further advice before we look to wrap things up, because we are running out of time pretty rapidly. Your advice for companies who are maybe not such a mature state as your sort of diversity program. What advice would you have for them who are following that journey at the moment and trying to put these kind of measures in place to reach the benefits that you found?
So number one, for sustainability initiatives to succeed, they must deliver tangible business value. I've seen a lot of well-intentioned projects being marketed out there, but perhaps lacking in substance. And I don't think that will cut it anymore, not in today's environment. So there has to be clear, tangible business value. You have to be able to demonstrate that. Nor will compliance necessarily be the consistent driving force that we thought it might be. You just have to look at Europe and the back and forth like CSRD, CS3D, and so on. So we're finding that businesses that invest in their people, businesses that invest in sustainability and are proactive rather than reactive will gain a competitive advantage. And if you're thinking about what competitive advantage might look like from a sustainability perspective, There's a great article by a guy called Wayne Visser, and he talks about the 10 R's. I'm going to try to remember them, but in some way, shape or form, the business case has to relate to increased revenues, mitigating a reduction of risk. Does it lead to better recruitment of the right skills, retention of existing resources, better returns, anticipating regulation, stronger resilience, reputational enhancement, enhancing research and development capabilities, or even, I think the final one is a bit of a stretch, but realizing clarity of purpose. Does it really help you clarify who you are as an organization? So think about a business case and try to articulate it in one or more of those terms, and I think you're on the right track.
I'm also very impressed you remembered all of those 10. I could have barely have counted to 5 there. And one final question if we can look to the future. Exciting sustainability projects for the future with IFS. Anything that particularly excites you that you've got on the horizon that you could talk about?
Yeah, of course. There's lots of reasons to feel excited at the moment, particularly in the technology space. We're super excited about the power and potential of industrial AI to better serve the needs of our customers. At the same time, there's perhaps a need to help cut through the hype. There's a lot of talk about AI, generative AI, agentic AI, and yes, technology matters. And what we're seeing, some incredible breakthroughs in technology. But again, coming back to that point I made before, has to have real business value. We have to be talking about what time to value looks like. We have to justify any investment. So while we'll continue to invest in cutting edge industrial AI capabilities, we're also working to make sure that we've got proven use cases where customers are deploying AI-based solutions today with real financial benefits, with real productivity benefits, and with real sustainability benefits as well. And if there's just one other point I think probably excites me in an interesting way, it's the idea fundamentally, I think some of the other speakers will talk to this, data is a fundamental challenge in the world of sustainability. And as such, we're really focused on continuing to develop our suite of solutions so they're specifically tailored at supporting our customers to collect, to manage, analyze, and make better decisions using their sustainability data. And we think that ability to help customers make better use of their data, that's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. Data continuously comes up in these conversations. I'm afraid we are out of time, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us here at Sustainability Live Singapore. Really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Take care.
Absolute pleasure.